The coolest set in all of V-Series is finally here, and with it we have a brand new meta analysis. Welcome folks! Today we're going to be taking a look at the meta for V-EB... which one is it now? I forgot. 11? 12? 12! It's 12. So, today we're going to take a look at the meta analysis, once again as always with the pie chart provided by Mr. Dexander himself. And so this is going to give you a brief look over the meta going forward. Now, how relevant this information, or not so much how relevant, how useful this will be is up for debate, simply because we've seen that Bouchard is already postponing events that are supposed to be held in March for, coronavirus reasons. And so therefore there's a chance that we won't be seeing too many events in this Vanities meta, actually, which is quite unfortunate. I myself was planning to go to the Antwerp, Belgium Team League, so I'll be going to the postponed one now, but alas, it's quite unfortunate that this happened, but I think it's definitely the right move to avoid a lot of these worries with coronavirus going around, so that's just how the cookie crumbles, so it makes sense. But as a result, the next meta-analysis is going to be kind of weird because in Japan, all the events that would have used the Astral Force meta have basically been cancelled, and we're basically not going to get many results for this entire meta, so it's going to be interesting to see what we're going to actually have to work with. Like, it's really up in the air, so we're going to see where things are, and then, we'll still make do with whatever we have, but really expect a lot less results than usual, simply because of the situation that, this virus puts us into. But anyway, we're going to take a look at this pie chart. I would like to remind you that if you wish to, you can become a channel member. My content is free for everyone, but I do really appreciate the membership, so if you want to, you can click the join button down below next to the subscribe button. It really means a lot. So, without any further ado, let us introduce to you our pie chart for the day. So if you've been enjoying the Zeta and Bea here on my computer screen, then unfortunately that's going away. So, what is this pie chart? I actually have to look at it myself because I don't sit in the usual spot normally when I record these videos. I look at this screen here, which tells me all the information, so now I gotta use my phone. So, what do we see is obviously still a big abundance of Bermuda Triangle. Now, this will be completely different in the English format, or so we would expect, simply because we are playing this format with the new restriction list, whereas Japan was not. They only started using the new restriction list halfway through the Astral Force meta, actually, so it wasn't even right off the bat. So it's going to be a pretty interesting factor to look out for. So here we can see 28% Bermudas. Obviously, I can tell you the breakdown. It was 90% Riviere, 5% Pacifica, 5% Riviere plus Melody. So majority is Riviere, and since Riviere got her restriction, maybe that one Pacifica, or more than one Pacifica, but the 5% Pacifica might actually pull through to be, what the contender will be for Bermudas, but I think Riviere will still be very strong. It lost this combo potential and just explosive turn potential, but however, it still can work pretty well as a tempo deck. Just kind of grinding things out, making your plus and your big waves with the Riviere, even if it's once per turn, and just fusing it with stuff like Coral or Melody will definitely work out. And since Melody lost the restriction on Lieselot and Sonata, then you can definitely make use of that too. We could even see Melody come back as well with that restriction being lifted, so I think that'll be an interesting thing to look out for. But I already did a whole video on Riviere on its own, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. I think it's just good that we kind of touch base and move on. So, second thing is the newcomer of this format, which is the one and only Dragonic Vanquisher. So, Vanquisher is, for this pie chart actually, we have 84% Vanquisher, 5% Golem Buster, and then 11% Unknown, so we can expect that to be either Vanquisher, Golem Buster, or both. And so Golem Buster is interesting because, to me, Golem Buster is obviously a very fun deck. Narukami is one of my main clans, but it's quite different from the way that Narukami's been played so far, in my opinion. It feels like a lot less of this like explosive mass bind everything or like restand stuff, and it's a lot more of just like also kind of tempo-based in a way. Like, you only have certain limited resources, aka your Chaturas, the grade 1 that calls himself out when he's bound, as well as Jaggy Shot as well. And so you only have a limited number of those pieces, obviously. And I mean, Jaggy Shot is the one that enables all the combos and makes the whole deck pop off. But if you're not able to actually maximize on it, and you don't know how to maximize on it, the deck isn't as crazy explosive as it could be, but well optimized, the deck actually does do pretty insane stuff. And it's interesting because to me it doesn't feel as much like unfair, or like in the sense that, oh, it just does so much in one turn, or like just takes you 0 to 6 in one turn kind of thing, but it's a lot more of just like grinding out, knowing when to push and when to not. And I mean, you could say this about other decks, of course, as well, but it feels a bit different than other standard decks. It feels like it's become a bit more complex than usual, and I really like that about the deck. It doesn't feel as simple to play, like when to trigger your Phoenixes and when to not is also a really important thing. And I feel like the deck it has a bigger ceiling than some previous standard decks, and I like that about the deck a lot. I think that honestly really adds a lot to the overall enjoyment you can get out of this deck, and I think that it's something that you want out of a card game as a whole, and I think that's, you know, just one of the fundamentals of having a good time with the deck, and I'm personally really glad about it. So Vanquisher is looking to be a homestay. You lost 2 Cho-Os out of your restriction list, but who really cares? You either play Zuitan, or you play Death Scythe, or you play whatever else really. But those two are kind of the main 2 cards that people are replacing them with, myself personally as well. And so it's interesting because we don't even get to play this deck with 4 Cho-Os at all in English. You literally, Vanquisher comes out, you gotta play 2 Cho-Os. So it's kind of interesting because if you played any tournaments before Vanquisher came out, then you essentially had to play 2 Cho-Os in your Gauntlet Buster deck. So that's kind of interesting in a way, but still very cool. And so the deck is super strong, but not in a sense that it feels too unfair. And that's what I hope that the upcoming releases and the rest of this format will be, because the director of Vanguard, I believe it was the director, was quite apologetic about the fact that the meta was so Axel based, so like unfair feeling. And so basically it looks like they're designing it in a way that will make it feel more fair. And looking at like Maluk Melek and the Astral Force clans as a whole, it feels a bit more fair. I think that's the emphasis word here. So Vanquisher, good start so far. Then we have Aqua Force, a newcomer as well. Aqua Force got itself Revonn, and Aqua Force is really, really strong. Revonn really enables you to essentially take away half a trigger from your opponent and then be able to bash them a bit faster. You know, you're able to even get over a Force grade 3 with a boost with your grade 2s and things like that. And the deck overall just does a lot of interesting things. We've seen 2 prominent builds kind of come up. We have one which kind of uses Algos and then one that doesn't. And so both builds are pretty interesting and pretty strong in their own right. This does feel a bit... It's kind of interesting because, again, it is one of these like Axel, like quick fast rush decks that only play like 4 grade 3s, kind of a la Angerblader in that sense, but it doesn't feel nowhere near as overwhelmingly strong as Angerblader. It's still very strong and obviously can still do a lot, and the pieces and just the resource management that it kind of gets from this set in terms of like how much you can just like soul in, draw with like combined with Coral Assault from the last set, it really feels like the deck can do quite a lot. And I just think that it's quite nice that they gave Aqua Force this interesting new playstyle. Obviously, it's a bit of a shame that Revonn doesn't translate into Premium as well, but for Standard, this deck is looking really strong and kind of pulled Aqua Force out of that, like, glory, just unguardable OTK kind of playstyle and into, once again, this cool, like, multi-attack, kind of Valios-style playstyle that it had in late G, and I definitely appreciate that. I think that it's a good direction for Aqua Force, and overall, like, I think this whole set is good direction set, I guess, because I like a lot from what this set is looking to be, and I think overall it's very good. So Aqua Force is definitely a good contender, especially post-restriction list. I think it's definitely going to be seeing quite a lot of tops on the west side as well as on the Japanese side, even with the recent sets coming out, and with the Tri-3 trial decks this month in Japan as well. Moving on, we have Murakumo at 11%. As I said, there's quite a few people innovating with Murakumo. Here we actually have 75% being Hyuga Shirayuki, so this won't be playable anymore, but 25% Hyuga Zanbaku. I have talked about this here and there in some videos, but Zanbaku is really looking to come back as the main backup grade 3 for Murakumo, simply because especially when you lose Shirayuki, you don't really have much else to resort to outside of like more Nudos, I guess, or like more Hyaki Vogues and things like that. But Shirayuki was such an important part of the playstyle that like shut down your opponent's turns, that I feel like you need some other way to kind of control your opponent to actually be able to make up for that, and it feels like Zanbaku is the answer to that. So we're going to see how much Murakumo can keep going, whether that deck is good enough to keep it alive, or if losing Shirayuki really is enough to completely bury it. But I feel like it's still going to be okay. It'll still be enough to be around, but yeah, Murakumo had a lot of time in the spotlight, and I feel like it makes sense for it to start to shrink a little bit as we go forward, especially with a lot of these Force clans coming up, and, you know, hopefully diversifying the meta a fair bit. Next up is our third feature from this latest set, which is Shadow Paladin. So Shadow's got Claret and also some Mordred support. From this breakdown, we have 50%. Oh no, my screensaver went away. Even though I cover it with cards in the editing, it doesn't matter. It's good for me to know the time. Anyway, so Shadows got Claret and also Mordred support. From this pie chart, it says 50% Mordred, 50% Unknown. So Mordred does have nice new cards. It's basically become a bit more stable because you get more searching, and it just basically the deck got more stable. And since a lot of the Axel clans got a huge hit from this last restriction list, I honestly think that Mordred will come back as one of the big force decks to be reckoned with, because I mean, when you take away the entire BTO6 plus Tachikaze meta and you simply revert it to like BTO5 plus the last few extra boosters plus Dark Irregulars and Shadows, you get a pretty interesting meta. And I mean, if you take away, like, if you take BTO6 meta, take away Pale Moon and Murakumo, you essentially get yourself Mordred meta. And then even if you add Tachikaze to it, but then take it away, it's still Mordred meta, because it's just Mordred was really good. And even in Worlds, in the Axel meta, Mordred was still, like, I myself regard Mordred as one of the better decks to be played, and one of the potential decks that people could play at the event, and they did play at the event. So Mordred was considered really highly, and there's no reason to be dropping it now. Claret Sword, on the other hand, is an interesting one, because Claret Sword is kind of what these Axel decks were for the last format, where it's just super fast. It wants to just beat your opponent ASAP on turn 3, you know, just grab Force 2, smack really quick, and get a restand and just end games fast. Like, that's kind of Claret what it's supposed to do. And so it's interesting because now with the disappearance of all those fast decks, that also, you know, being a fast deck, you don't have as many defenses unless you're Pale Moon, but you need a lot of setup for, well, not a lot of setup, but you need a certain flow of turns to get that big hand to defend against Claret. But because now we're going back to a force-oriented meta and potentially protect-oriented, maybe not so much oriented, but inclusive, I feel that Claret, even having the force numbers, will not be enough to actually, like, even if it's fast, I feel like those decks can just deal with it better, simply because it's easier for them to put up with it, and that's kind of what force decks were kind of made to be, in a way, and same with Protect as well. So I feel like Claret, it's interesting. In Japan, it really had a time to shine, and it did get a few tops here and there. I mean, here it says Unknown, but I'm pretty sure that at least some of those are actually Claret tops. But the deck, yeah, a lot of people thought that it was bad, but in all honesty, it is very... I wouldn't say it's super good, but it's good. Like, if you picked up Claret stuff, I don't think you should be regretting it. I think it's still a good deck and something fun. And I mean, worst case, like, your Branwens are worth much more, and therefore they can be put into any deck because of how versatile they are. But Claret overall, I think, is good. Definitely good. I don't think it's tier 1, but tier 2, I would say yes. So that's kind of my stance on Claret. I think out of the 3 clans of this set, it definitely does feel like it is the short end of the stick, but regardless, it's still good. So, moving forward, we have some of the usual faces. Gold Paladin, so it's your aggravating as usual, and some Azel apparently, so that's pretty interesting. Tachikaze is your Anger Blader as always. Kagero got itself a couple tops, and they were both the end. So this is another deck that I wonder if it will come back up going forward, simply because it was really quite prominent before BTO6 came out, even in BTO5 meta with Golem Buster being around. It was still quite prominent simply because you go Force 2, you use the Guard Restrict Grade 2, and then it's just like bum bum bum, that's it. You know, like, if they don't have PGs, they're just kind of dead, or they have to really bank on, like, you kind of manipulate the way they guard, and if they overguard one of the attacks, they're going to die to one of your others, as long as you can restand every time. But yeah, so the end coming back, I'm not too surprised, but I'm surprised it came back in this meta before the restriction list, but we'll see. Revere did force more force decks, interesting, to come up, so I like that it had that effect, but I can definitely see that we're probably going to be seeing more of the end, and more of Kagero come back up as well, I would assume. And finally, we have kind of the usual stuff we've been seeing so far. Dark Regulars, Genesis. Pale Moon only got 1 top. It really has been taking quite a few L's, and then getting that L on the restriction list really felt like the nail in the coffin. And then finally, Great Nature and Nova Grapplers. These are kind of the usual decks that we see getting 1 or 2 tops every format, and so it's not too surprising. I think all of those will continue to get tops. I think Beast Deities could come back for Novas as well with this new restriction list, because it's not, like, the things that creeped it out aren't there anymore, so it's just like, well, I guess you can still play. So that's just kind of how it works out. But very interesting format. It's also interesting the disparity that we have between English and Japanese now, because like these results are somewhat relevant, but not too relevant, because we have the restriction list and this did not. And so it'll be interesting with the Astral Force meta too. We'll have two different pie charts, one pre-restriction list and one post, and so it'll be interesting to take a look at that as well. But I'm pretty excited to cover that. But yeah, so that's your meta-analysis on time and punctual. That's quite rare, but with these daily uploads I kind of got my stuff sorted, so that's also good. But on that note, I guess that's going to be it for this video. What do you think of this meta? What do you think of this Vanity set and the 3 clans that got support? Are you excited to bring them to Team League, or are you looking forward to more of the upcoming releases? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. So that's going to be it for me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.